Hello, everyone. Welcome to the roundup here on BloodbowlLive. Here to go through all of the fixtures from the last week of the ADBBL Season 8. Chris here with you as always, joined by, as always, Mr. Tom Hoffel. Tom, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And Mr. Scott Bryant as well. Scott, good evening.
Good evening, Christopher.
We have got 8 games to go through this week, and we will dive straight in to our games. Let's figure out how we do this. There we go. It's as if I'd never done it before. We start this week with the Bitey Ducks versus the Aardvarks and Dragons Dark Elves. So immediately some context for anybody who is not aware of the situation. Our Crimson Coven coach decided to step away from this league. Thank you very much to John for his participation, and we hope to see him in a future season. Because he stepped away, we replaced the team with a like-for-like team of Dark Elves, and that team will be played by volunteer coaches without a conflict of interest from the opposing division, so that there is no other tactics at play there. Simon very kindly decided to volunteer himself to play these Dark Elves, and thank you very much to Simon. And my God, did he give me a scare in this game? It was you look at it and you see 3 cash and 2-1. It was nervy. It wasn't kind of simple. There was an element of control, but it was not an easy fixture at all. Game started pretty well for the Ducks, as far as I can remember. I'm now immediately forgetting. It started okay. Enough pressure from the Dark Elves to make me score on turn 4, and then the Dark Elf attack was going all right. I kind of had it relatively covered, and managed to free up the ball and break away. The crowd, on the other hand, had different ideas. So when the skink got hit and the ball went into the crowd, the ball was then thrown right towards my end zone, where a Dark Elf just had a 2-up dodge to run out, pick up the ball on a 2-up, and then a 2-up rush to score. And the rush didn't happen because actually there were enough Dark Elves in the right place to stall it out for a turn, but a touchdown on turn 7 to bring the game to 1-1. Second half then went a little bit better. A blitz in the kickoff event for the second half allowed me to put some pressure on the ball straight away, and kick allowed me to get it into the right place. And then I think from turn 4 on to all the way through to turn 8 of the second half, I stalled the crap out of the game and slowly removed elves until there were only about 4 left on the pitch. So Simon put up an absolute scare and a really good showing from him for a coach who'd never played Dark Elves before. So well done to Simon. It was a really good effort. And I think a few players left on the pitch and maybe not that unlucky blitz. And I do think it could have gone differently. But a good result for the Lizards.
How did Jordell Freshbreeze play, Chris? What was it like lining up against the superstar Wood Elf War Dancer?
Jordell had a difficult game, to put it bluntly. If we scroll down to turn 7, that turn 7 foul was a gang foul that resulted in the chameleon skink being sent off, but Jordell being knocked out, and Jordell never came back from that point. So very much if the elf was free and I had the opportunity to foul it, I tried and just tried to keep it out of the game, and probably got lucky that it didn't come back with any of the knockouts, to be fair, because I knew that was the threat, and I knew that was why I needed to stall out in the second half as much as I could, because if I scored, I knew that Jordell has everything that they need in order to get a 2-turn with all that actually with the edge 1 on it. Like, it's even ignoring prehensile tail at that point. So I had to stall it out. So I kept him out of the game, which was the plan.
Have you ever played Dark Elves before?
Not as Lizards. I played Dark Elves twice last season as OWA, losing 5-2 and 2-0. and I played them twice as Skaven a few seasons back, winning 3-1 and 3-2. They're a really interesting team to face. They've got all that edge. They're more difficult to remove than other elves, so they're a good challenge. And I think they're like any elf team. If you can start to remove them, and when you do, you are then in a good place. So yeah, that's kind of that was the plan, and it worked.
Excellent.
Very good. Well done. First of all, well done, Simon, for stepping in and taking the helm of the A&D Dark Elves for that match as well. And thank you, Phil, and thank you, chat, for noticing the festive attempt at least one of us has made. Yeah.
We'll put in more effort next week. I promise.
Phil suggesting Christmas jumpers, possibly.
We can figure that out. I'm sure we can figure that out. Let's move on to the next game. Playing side by side was on the opposite pitch, was the Jaffa Cakes versus the Inglorious Bastards. A 1-1 draw for this incredible Snotling team that we are seeing this season. And, well, let's start the way we always start with these games and see what abominations were brought to this pitch. Ripper, Bogrot, Varag, Fink to Fixer, Biastref, Halfling Master Chef, Writers Rookies, Heady Brew, and the team mascot, No Giant, coming to this game. But Ripper and Varag, two of the more expensive of the options that the Jaffa Cakes have to choose from, and then the Master Chef coming in as well. Nick's only got the one reroll to lose in his Inglorious Bastards team, and playing next to this game was quite interesting because it very much in the first half it very much looked like Nick had kind of some control over this. The Bastards were really were plowing through and removing snots from the pitch. The Writers Rookies meant there were plenty of spares, but they were moving forward quite nicely. But unfortunately, just couldn't quite stop. I think they were close. I think this is one of Scott's closer games here, but couldn't quite stop a touchdown at the end. Tom, coming to you first on this one. The Nurgle team, this is their only point of the season at the moment. This 1-1 draw, looking like they're going to be at the bottom of the table. But I think we're gonna see this a lot this season, where games like this, where coaches like Nick grab a point, take a point away from the Snots, it could be these sort of games that decide other coaches' seasons.
Yeah, I think so. I think the fact that the Inglorious Bastards have got so many skills on them now over a wide range of people, so they haven't just got a couple of star players, so to speak, which is potentially causing some problems for the Snotlings now. That you've got a multitude of very good players in that team that can just kind of dispatch these Snotlings. And equally, I don't know whether the Jaffa Cakes were stalling out, but their touchdown was right on the last turn, so that's an interesting one to point out. And it was Varag as well who was doing it. I wonder whether not having a giant might be the downfall of these Snotlings.
It's interesting. We've seen sort of mixed results that haven't gone the way of the Snotlings. Two of which we'll have to have a little bit more of a look at their fixtures that they've played here. Definitely two results haven't had a giant in the game. Be interesting to look back at the game. There was a giant so I think it's actually 50-50. The games that have either been drawn or lost, two have had a giant and two haven't. It does seem the stars that are chosen kind of play a pretty heavy role here. Scott, would you have, if you were the Snotlings in this game, would you have gone for the giant over the chef because you're looking at similar values there? Obviously, that would have reduced the reroll count for the Snots.
On this occasion, I would have gone for the giant over the chef, purely as you said, Chris. Nick's been playing with just the one reroll. So in terms of that trade-off for one extra reroll versus a giant who we know can absolutely brutalize any line of scrummage as well. I did think when I saw the inducements being drawn and when they were starting to be published on Tour Play that, Varag and Ripper, plus with Fink in it, that's still a pretty good solid lineup, isn't it? That's a lineup you don't want to be facing on a good day. Plus we know Mr. Norman, evening Mr. Norman, if you're in chat this evening, we know of his perchance for and his desire and love of everything to be fouled, really, as well. So it was all a challenge, always going to be a challenge for Nick. And I know that when we've spoken before about Nick's results up to this point, Nick's an improving coach. He's really improving with the Pastards as well. Tom made the good point that he's got a lot of individuals skilled up, not just one or two. And he does cause difficulty for other people. And I think this draw just highlights that as well. So he's doing what you need to do against the Jaffa-Cates. He's got that continual removal of snotlings as well. So when we look at that, I think Nick did really, really well. I think, yes, Scott possibly came out of this one with, a point is not a bad, is a good result, actually, when you look at this as well. So I think whilst at the start of the match, it definitely looked like the favourite, or the Jaffa-Cates was slightly favoured, slight ahead. Kudos to Nick and the Pastards. They really turned it around. And yeah, I think to your point, Chris, a 1-1 draw may have a very significant outcome on a lot of, on these coaches and a lot of other coaches in the league as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's games like this, show that the league is very tight. Anybody can get a result against anyone, and nobody should feel too safe about the points that they're sat on, because a game that we think might be easy may not go our way. So definitely a sign of some stuff to come. Well done, Nick. Well done, Scott. Scott will be back with him later on. But first, we go to a repeat of a game from, I think, last season. The Plague Brigade versus the Buffalo Biggins here. Carl versus Harrison, and a 1-1 draw here. That was a very bashy affair. 3 casualties for the Skaven team and 5 for the Orcs. An absolute punch fest in this game. Lots happening. Blizzard going on in the background as well. Absolute chaos when it comes to this one. Both coaches coming away with a lot of SPP. And again, this is another game where you're looking at 2 coaches here, and you're probably saying that you would maybe expect Harrison to be making a climb up the table. Harrison's clearly, Scott, found himself a bogey coach in Carl, because when we think Harrison's on a bit of a resurgent run, he comes up against Carl and doesn't get the result he needs. It happened last season, and it's happened here again.
Carl, you're in chat. I know. Congratulations. You have now been named, and you now have the official moniker of Bogey Coach, or the Buffalo Biggins Bogey Coach. Here, right, Chris. It's a classic game of, you've got the edge of the Skaven wanting to stay away at arm's length from the big guns. You've got the absolute bashiness personified with Harrison and the Buffaloes as well. And when you look at it, my heart did go out when I was watching, keeping an eye on this one, to Carl. We know he's struggled, and when we look at the honours board in terms of injuries and casualties, to lose one gutter runner in a match is a really gut-wrenching thing. To lose all 3 gutter runners that you've got in a match, it's like Nuffle is really testing you, isn't he? So it very much felt that. And this is the classic thing we've always talked about rats. No matter how many casualties you put on rat, they can still score as well, whether it's the big rat ogre, oops, was that someone there? Bit of feedback there. Whether it was the rat ogre taking out a big unblocker, but Harrison kept on coming, and he just couldn't get there as well. It's actually Harrison who scored on turn 16. So it was, very, very close for Carl, and possibly could have nicked it as well. Sorry, Carl's made some comments in chat as well. I think Harrison's coming off better at the end of the match. Some meaty looking Orcs, definitely.
There are some good players in that team, and you're right. You look at the injuries that have taken place here, and you've got the all of the injuries that those rats took are all pretty brutal. Missed Nick's game on a blitzer, -1 passing on a clan rat. You probably don't mind too much. miss next game on a gutter runner, in hindsight, is pretty good. When you then look further up and you do have the -1 passing on a gutter runner, you then get a dead clan rat, and then you've got -1 edge on a gutter runner. That's on a gutter runner who already had a couple of skills. That is not what you want to see as a Skaven coach.
Yeah.
Looking at Harry's team, Tom, he's got some orc players here to be very envious of. You've got a number of stars here. The Blitzer with block tackle, block tackle, dodge, strip ball, and mighty blow, and a big one with block, mighty blow, armbar, and pile driver. Maybe not quite what you want, but gives you an option there. He's got a strong team here if he can string some results together.
Absolutely. Just that Blitzer lineup, they've all got mighty blow apart from one, which has got kick. That's a formidable force, really, isn't it? With 4 big and blockers as well. You're almost looking at star players across the board. So when you come up against that kind of level, that's a scary thought. And even actually just looking at that Blitzer you just mentioned with dodge, tackle, mighty blow, strip ball, it's got 27 SPP on it.
Yeah.
As well. That is phenomenal. So maybe that might get a strength increase at some point as well to get it up to the same level as big and blockers. This is a great team. I like playing orcs, and it's clearly it was a bit of a crumping time for them in this game. Especially, and my heart goes out to the Plague Brigade, because for whatever reason they always get an absolute hammering. Question to both of you as your Skaven players: would you get rid of that gutter runner now that it's got Edge 3?
I think I would.
I would.
Because the skills on it, wrestle and tackle, are quite defensive skills, and they were both randomly put on that player. I think Edge 3 on a gutter runner is just not going to do it. It's not what you need them to have. You've basically now got a quick but low strength lineman, and because I guess because if you were to sack the gutter runner now, I guess the problem that Carl's got is it sounds awful. He's missing so many players. He doesn't have the treasury to replace the gutter runner yet. And actually, looking at the number of dedicated fans he's got, he might not have the treasury after the next game. So I think you probably have to sit on that gutter runner. You possibly see what the situation is after the next game. You maybe sit on it for another game, allow it to just be in the firing line, and maybe try and utilize that tackle and utilize that that wrestle a bit, and not really care if it dies, because you're probably then sacking it afterwards.
Yeah,
I also think, though, we need to shout out to Carr. He's drawn his last 2 games against the Clowns and the Big Uns, and he's taken, as you've rightly alluded to there, Tom, he's taken some very high casualty rates as well. So to still come away with 2 draws, credit to Carl for for managing these Skaven and his never say die attitude.
And again, Carl is taking points away from coaches who need them and are looking at the top of the table. He's taken 2 off the Bleeding Clowns. He's taken 2 off the Buffalo Big Uns. He's looking like a coach who is going to have a bit of an impact on things to come. So much all the best to both these coaches for their next few games. On
a positive, he would be able to afford, I think, depending on who his next opposition is. There's a certain gutter runner with stab, 150k.
That's a good point, actually.
So he's going to have some decent inducements if he's playing one of the heavier teams as well. Okay, you've got three journeymen. That's 150k. That only gives you 910 in terms of team value. So if he's got a couple of 100k, and if he
needs five journeymen.
Oh, sorry, does he? That's a shame. So he might be able to afford Skitter maybe, or someone like that. But you could always get someone like Bomber. That's always, for 80k, just throwing bombs in and annoying a lot of people.
Yeah, because he's going to need 5 journeymen, and he'll literally have one of each positional: gutter runner, rat ogre, blitzer, and thrower.
It's all you need. Ask any good underworld coach, you know.
Could this be the Skaven version of the Jaffa Cakes? Just all line rats.
I don't think anyone wants to run all line rats. Well, we'll have a look at our next game then, and it was a resounding 4-0 victory for the Dead Star Belgrave over the Boulders Army. A result that Dave very much needed, having a slow start to the season with 2 losses, needing to kick his season into gear. A result that Leanne maybe didn't want, and goes along with some of the results she's had so far this season. Pouring rain not helping the situation in this game, but a very, very strong result for David. And it's tricky to kind of look at this one too much, and draw too many judgments from it. I think we've got a coach who is very much still learning, Tom, and we've got a coach who is in their 3rd season with this undead team. We maybe just had a little bit of a golfing experience here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even not just taking Ripper didn't unfortunately help in this matter as well. Yeah, it looks like it's a bit of a learning a lesson in this kind of match. The actual Shambling Undead, although they're quite slow, the Black Orcs are equally slow, aren't they, on that side of things? And those Shambling Undead have got quite a few nice skilled up players, especially that Ghoul Runner with block, strip ball, and jump up. As you mentioned, it may be that the experience won the day on this one.
It's interesting. You look at this undead team, and like my assumption is always that Shambling Undead are the slowest of the undead teams that you can have. But actually, when you look at the roster, yes, they've got the 2/3 movement 3 mummies, but the 2 blitzes are movement 6, and then you've got 4 movement 7 pieces in your Ghoul Runners. There is quite a lot of edge there, and they are quite have the pace. And you look at the amount of SPP that they're sitting on here. Scott, this could, and this game was a big one for Dave to really grow this team and allow to push himself forward to get that SPP.
Yes. Dave's his initial 2 defeats of the season have been against some very, very strong coaches, against Scott and John, so the Clans and the Terrors respectively. So we always knew it was a difficult start, but you write off Dave at your peril, given how he's redrafted this team. So as you rightly called out there, Tom, good old Robert Lewandowski and Stephen Graveyard, 2 very key players for this side as well. They do have the edge as you've got, and it's another experience and learning for Leanne in terms of her progression. I was really surprised she took Ripper in terms of the star player for however much he costs. I think it's 230. So yes, I think it would have been another learning for her. And again, it's just showing how Dave knows this team very, very well indeed. They're not slouches, and I think people who look at Shambling and think, "Oh, it's just movement 4 or 5." No. You know, the Ghoul Runners really get well. They're basically elves, aren't they? If you look at them, strength 7, strength 3, movement 7, armor value 8 with dodge. That's a decent elf.
It's the taking Ripper in this team, it gives you it essentially gives you two strength 5 trolls, doesn't it, on your line to combat those mummies and keep those at bay to a degree. You look at the games that Leanne has had to play so far this season. We've had John's Vampires, who are storming the division, Luke's Chaos Renegade, again, up there in the mix, Justin's Halflings, absolutely in the mix, and Dave, who is powering his way up the field. It's been a very difficult start to the season, but probably not many better runs of fixtures that you could ask for as far as learning and playing against good coaches. It's what we've had people say all the time, that the playing against the good coaches may be a grind and may be difficult. You may come away with lots of losses, but you learn an awful lot from them.
I think you do as well. I know Leanne's got to play Acredes and the Bleeding Clans, which again is not an easy match, but I still think of her other remaining 3 matches, I think there's possibly a win there for her this season.
Yeah, absolutely, and the variety that she's playing against will only benefit her in the future.
Exactly. Results there to be had. Well done to Dave for jump-starting his season. Still very much out of place in the table, we think. So it will be interesting to see how far up he can climb. We're halfway diving into the second half of games then, and we have the Inglorious Pustards are back, and the Riotous Rams making their debut this season with a 1-0 victory over the Nurgle side. A Riotous Rams team that is very interesting when we look at it. Only redrafted 2 players, but 2 very, very good players that were redrafted. Nanny is back, as is Bob, the chosen blocker. So 2 very, very strong positionals that he has got in that team. And this was a really interesting one to see because these coaches have played each other before a number of times in previous seasons with different teams on Nick's side. And I think what was very clear in this game when you looked at the how the game was kind of going was actually that there are previous games when I think would have seen a 3-0, 4-0, possibly even 5-0 result here for the Rams. And Tom, while this isn't a win for Nick, it's a really big statement as to how much he has improved as a player over the last few seasons, that he is frustrated and held Rich to just the 1-0 victory.
Yeah, absolutely. And equally, it's always that frustrating thing when you bring on a star player and they die in the first turn as well. That can really get into your head. But as we've said before, the Inglorious Pustards have got a really good team here. They shouldn't be downhearted about the actual final score. They really took it to them, especially with, by the looks of things, the Riotous Rams having to do a huge amount of fouling just to break through this team by the looks of things.
If you actually look at the SP there, Tom, as well, it's a complete reverse. I mean, it was a low-scoring SP match, which you'd expect from like maybe 2 teams that can't quite put each other away, but 8-4 for the Pustards as well. Yeah, shows that this wasn't an easy match. I was quite surprised that both Skaven star players turned up, both superstars. So Krieg and then Hackflem turns up for the Rams.
Yeah, so did the Riotous Rams use some of their treasury?
They did. They spent their treasury to bring Creek into the game, which probably makes it even the more painful that he goes down on turn 1 and is out and is off the pitch, which is very unfortunate. It's an interesting tactic because I think that without taking that inducement and without having done that, then we wouldn't have seen Hackflem appear for the Rams, which was the scoring threat. But he wanted to bring some extra strength into this game. I think maybe, do we think that something, we'll get onto the Rams in a second and talk a bit more about them, but do we think that something that maybe can go in the Rams' favor is, I think we're possibly all guilty of getting a little bit of snow blindness against Rich's Rams, wanting to kill Nanny, and therefore taking or playing in ways to achieve that rather than get the result that is needed. Do you think maybe there's a little bit of that at play here, where Creek was brought in possibly for that task, and maybe it wasn't as useful as it should have been?
Looking at that, I don't think that Nick needed to bring on Creek. If you look at, apart from Bob and Nanny for the Rams, there's no reason why the Pustards with their, setup, why they shouldn't be able to go at that. They've got the bloaters, so they've got their strength 4 pieces as well. They've also, they're looking at that. They've got their rot spawn, so they've got 2 strength 4, 1 strength 5 piece as well. The rot spawn with grab gives them that ability on the line of scrummage as well. So I was really surprised that Nick decided if he's going to do it. Yeah, there's nothing I can see in tour play without speaking to the coaches themselves, and especially Nick, if his intent was to go for Nanny or Bob to at least take them out of the game. To your point, though, Chris, it Yeah, I think the inclusion of Creek did give Rich that extra piece. He did obviously go for the legend that is Hackflem, and we know what Hackflem to do, and then turn 15 touchdown for any Nurgle team, no matter who you've got and what skills you've got. It's just, to try and get a one turner there, it's going to be challenging, I think is the understatement.
Just out of curiosity, you buying a star player with your treasury rather than petty cash, does that increase your team value? And then does that then... So if in this situation you've done Krieg on tour play and done, I'm done, and pressed it, and then I'm not saying it was the case before anyone starts making accusations, but then Hackflem gets picked. How does that work? Because that's an interesting one. Because obviously, clearly, you said on tour play, you set it up and then you press your button to say, "Yep, that's my lot." You can play quite. I don't say that people do, but you can play quite tactically in that kind of way.
Yeah, I think the thing is you've got the coach with with the higher team value selects first and therefore has the option to use their money, and then the other, I think there's always that risk, isn't there? If you are already giving away inducements and then you spend money to give away more, there is always the risk that you end up giving them enough to get something that hurts you. And in this case, I think that's probably what's happened. He's given away enough inducements to get something that hurt him. Looking at Rich's team then here, what I think is quite interesting is while he's got the 1-0 win here, and we know that because bonus points aren't there, all anyone needs is a 1-0 win. Bonus points aren't a thing. You don't need to be winning 3-0 with multiple cash. You just need that 1-0 grind and you can get where you need to go. Do you think that I wonder whether like 1-0 wins like this will maybe hinder coaches a little bit, just because the player that got the touchdown has had a random skill, random pile driver on that beast man. Pile driver, not really a skill that you probably want, but it's there. Now that's where the MVP came from. The touchdown, came from Hackflem, so there's no SPP team there.
Yeah.
So Rich's team hasn't really grown in this last game. He hasn't really kind of developed it much. So there's this interesting balance between just needing enough to get the win, because you just need the 3 points and that's it, but also that team development. So it's a different dynamic to this season, I guess.
Yeah, because I'm right in saying that the only two players he's brought back are Nanny and Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is he playing a different kind of game here, where this may be the last time we see the Riotous Rams, and he's playing tactically that he's like, well, I'm just going to mess around with effectively 3-star players, Nanny and Bob, plus I'll buy a star player.
Well, we know that the Rams are here this season to get Nanny to superstar status.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as that happens, we will see a different team from Rich. So we'll see how long that takes. Nanny needs to get in the mix and start getting those casualties, but there are 7 games left to play for these Rams. So there's plenty of
Nanny, and there's the knockout as well, isn't it? So Nanny at the moment is 19 out of 50 in terms of SPP as well. So that means you're looking at 31 SP for Nanny over the course of, 7 games. Yeah. So Nanny's got to get MVP every single game and score at least 1 touchdown or get at least 2 casualties, or a combination of all of the above. So Nanny and Richard, if Rich's ambition is to get Nanny to a star player level this season, it's work still to be done on that front.
One final stat is the Riotous Rams are the 3rd regional ranked United Kingdom Chaos Chosen on tour play.
And not surprising at all.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next game then. And we've got the Jaffa Cakes are back in the frame against the Transfigurian Terrors here. A game with many, many, many inducements yet again. Let's do our normal thing. We'll scroll right down to the bottom and see what they were. Now, there was something very interesting with these inducements when they came out, because there's an inducement that I think you hope. I think there is now a very clear single inducement
Yeah.
you want them to pick, and that is Grack and Crumbleberry. I think as soon as you see Grack and Crumbleberry come out onto this team, you know that there's not going to be a giant. And even if you then take a very expensive star player and then you take the extra team training, we're starting to gauge the fact that there is a line in the sand with the inducements where, depending on which ones are randomly picked, it doesn't really matter how many part-time coaches and things you add; they don't really make much of a difference. And we're starting to kind of see this a little bit. This game was a interesting one. Vampires giving away 1,590,000 in inducements, the most all season that has been given away. The rookies, only 6 rookies coming into the frame. Creek appears as well in this one. Sweltering Heat, which I immediately worried for John when Sweltering Heat came out, because with the Riotous rookies, Sweltering Heat is not going to be a thing at all for those Snotlings. It's not going to be a worry at all. But I think changing weather then immediately on turn 1 changed the Sweltering Heat away. We got standard weather, and we got a good game of Blood Bowl out of it as well. Scott, these vampires are on a unholy charge here. 5 wins, 1 draw, 0 losses so far this season. One of only 2 teams to take a win from the Jaffa Cakes, and not many teams are taking points off them. And an inducement taken, John's reminding me that a ref inducement coming in for the vampires, sort of helping with any of those shenanigans that the Snotlings take. A very, very strong result, and this vampire team are a team to fear.
Yes, very, very much. I think it was very, very canny for John to take that extra inducement of Jorm the Ogre as the referee as well. And when if you people, this match is available on YouTube if you want to go back and watch it. But when Scott rolled that 8 for changing weather, you could almost hear the palatable, sigh of relief and phew from John, because to be against that, and as you rightly said, Chris, sweltering heat, it could have been absolutely destroying. So I think John played it really, really savvy. He kept the pressure on, kept removing, exactly as we've seen with Nick and we talked about before, kept the pressure on, didn't quite get as many injuries in terms of other teams against the Snotlings, but it was enough to keep them honest, and it was enough to keep just on top of it as he needed. And we know John's a very good coach, getting that early scoring, completion, and then the early score, very much straight away on turn 3. So already then the pressure is back on. Getting some feedback from Scott as well in terms of John was really playing Hypnotic Gaze strongly, which is opening things up for him as well. And then, of course, the quicker you can score, the quicker Krieg uses his I'll be back row. So as soon as all of a sudden, it's going to be very, very challenging for you. So, yeah, it was a very, very good, very controlled match by the Vampires, who are frankly, and I mean this with all sincerity and respect, they're looking very terrifying and filthy at the moment.
Yeah,
I think they're up to 1.6 million at the moment in team value, I believe.
I think the Jaffa Cakes had a taste of their own medicine with that Hypno Gaze. It was thoroughly frustrating, Scott. I was playing on the board next to him, and he just kept looking over at me going, that Hypno Gaze, it's so overpowered. How is it happening again? And there was a time where I looked over and everyone was like in the center of the pitch, apart from, I think, 3 of John's players. 1 vampire, 2 thralls, right in Scott's touchdown area, and he was just wandering it backwards and forwards, just using Hypno Gaze all over the place. So yeah, look, it was an hilarious looking game, and as you quite rightly say, the Grack and Crumbleberry kind of combination, you could see the little smile come across John's face with the relief that there was no giant on the pitch. Yeah, but both players, both coaches had such a fun game. It was a great game.
So John is currently looking like he's currently looking sort of on paper best performing coach this season so far. You look at these vampires, we've got block and dodge on 5 of them. 2 of them have pro, we've got leader in there, 2 of them have tackle, strip ball in there as well. He's got a roster of 15 players, so he's only got 1 space in his roster. He doesn't have a Vargeist in there, but he's got an APOC, he's got 4 built-in team rerolls. He is clearly not afraid of the inducement game because he now has a high enough team value that he's going to be giving away giants worth of inducements to almost every other coach in the league. So there's clearly no fear there on what could come up and what he could face. A coach clearly with some confidence in the team that he's got.
Yeah, how many more games has he got to play?
2.
In
this side of it, I believe 2 more.
2 group games left to play.
Yeah. And again, this is a team that John sort of, he did say, his words to me as well was he had to play them again because he had an itch. The beginning of last season started off a bit slow, started to build them, and it just shows with a two season build, you can develop something which is, and I mean this, with the most respect for Blood Bowl coaches, absolute pure filth in the best possible way as well. It is. It's, if you were playing this team, you'd be so happy. If you were playing against this team, you'd be less so. But to your point, Chris, if you've got at least 300k inducements, possibly 600k, I think then it's going to give other coaches the opportunity to say, how do we stop these vampires? Is it bodies on the pitch? Is it bodies in the reserve box? Or is it thinking something and doing something slightly different on these guys as well?
It's going to be interesting to see how far they can go. At the moment, I'm struggling to see who can stop them. And yeah, very relieved coach I am that I'm not in the firing line before we get to playoffs for sure. A good result for the Vampires. A big game at the top of the NBC because 2 coaches who are absolutely fighting for top 4 spaces, and a 2-1 victory puts John very comfortably in the mix, overtaking the Bitey Ducks to take top spot. Bitey Ducks needed to get a win to retain that top spot, and they did not manage to do that against the Halfling team of the T-Belly Trudgers. A 1-0 loss, 1-0 victory to the Halfling team here. Master Chef Rodney Roachbake and Rumbelow coming in order to stop the Ducks in their tracks here. A game which I am not ashamed to say in the first half I got very, very salty and needed to have a Kit Kat and a Monster and a calm down and had a much more enjoyable second half. So my apologies to Justin. I'm not afraid. I'm not ashamed to say that I let myself down in this one, but it was an interesting game. It was a tough one. It felt the first couple of turns felt like I made a mistake and Justin's dice let me get away with it. And then got unfortunate with a 1 into a 1 for a dodge roll, which lost me the ball and landed it next to a tree that I wasn't able to retrieve. So Rodney doing what Rodney does, grabbing it, grabbing the ball and getting down to score. I got very fortunate that, as Justin said in the chat, we both said, right, well, we need a 3 so I can have a timeout and try and score, and we rolled a 3 to get the timeout. But unfortunately, Halfling, a 1 dice from a Halfling with a reroll, knocked the ball free of the skink and stopped the equalizer coming there. Second half, trees did their thing, removed plenty of Saurus on the pitch. I think I spent most of the second half with 6 or 5 players on the pitch, and the halflings kind of marched down, did as best I could to slow them down, and then a failed dodge from Rodney freed up the ball, and I had one turn 16 chance to pick it up, 5 up, pass it, and try and go in for the touchdown. But unfortunately, the pass didn't happen. So it was a tough game, and we had a good chat afterwards. It was really nice to have a conversation with Justin afterwards to kind of see what things I could have done differently to have got a result out of that one. Could I, is there anything major that I did? And I think the areas where I made my kind of biggest errors kind of weren't weren't huge, but there were a few things to learn. So it was very close. It was a game I felt there was a draw there for the Ducks, but hats off to Justin. Played it very well, brought some very good inducements, some very good star players that did exactly what they needed to do for him, and it was a good game and a tough loss for the Ducks, but there's still games to play. So well done to the Halfling team.
What was your game plan at the start of the match, Chris?
It was, if I can take one tree out early, I'll be happy, and then it was see if we can remove as many halflings as we can and grind our way forward. Halflings, we didn't really manage to remove many. We did stun the tree at the beginning and even gave it a cheeky foul to try and keep it off the pitch, and managed to roll we fouled it and then got sent off and managed to argue the call instantly, which was quite fortunate. So that was it, really. Avoid the trees. And the second half, we did better at avoiding the trees, keeping a sacrificial lamb on them, but kind of making sure they weren't too much part of the equation. Worked a bit better in the second half, but yeah, sometimes it just doesn't come together.
Not to rub any of your salty salt into your wounds, but how did Rodney Roachbait play? Because obviously he's a new star player, and I haven't actually seen him on the pitch yet.
Yeah, I got the ball exactly. Got the ball using a special skill to sort of reach out and grab it. Yeah, it was. He kind of did. I'm in two minds about Rodney, because I feel like he's a bit of a one-trick pony, and I think he fell short in the second half because he didn't have dodge, because he has wrestle instead. If he had dodge, I think it would have been different. Sidestep was good though. But Rodney, I think won. I think Justin will agree. Rodney probably won the game because the sidestep made it more difficult for me to block them off as they were charging down the pitch, and the special skill allowed them to get the ball quite nicely. So yeah, it's it kind of as Justin said, it was the loner. He passed a loner reroll and then failed a 3-up. So I guess if he had dodge, it wouldn't have made too much of a difference. But I think there was one time Rodney may have gone down on a stumble, but I'm not sure. But I think Rodney was probably the star here. And did really well, and yeah, I think he was put to good use in this situation.
Cool.
Yeah, a big thank you to Justin. It was a good, fun game, and yeah, both coaches here, 2 games left to play, still all to play for at the top there. I know that both coaches will be hoping to get some good results in the last games, both with very tricky games to come. So yeah, well done, Justin. Thank you very much for a very fun game. On to the final game of the week. And Mr. Tom Hovell, we're coming to you. 2-1 victory for the Washington Deadskins. For the Clueless Crusaders against the Washington Deadskins. And I know there was kind of some good sportsmanship at the end of this one. So why don't I let you kind of explain how this game went down?
Absolutely, yeah. So first and foremost, thanks to Jack for a fantastic game. It was really, really good fun. So start off well for the Clueless Crusaders. Unfortunately, we scored in turn 3, and we were worried that we were going to go the same way as Ipswich Town normally do when they score early. Within 2 turns, the Washington Deadskins had drew level again. It was a very tight game. The initial touchdown was from some very fortunate chain pushing to get the actual ball carrier out and around and in for the touchdown. However, people who know Necromantic know that they can score equally as quickly, especially with werewolves, and that was exactly the case here. Pushing out a gap between the humans and just sprinting down the field. That was a great one. that just left me to try multiple things. So again, I tried the halfling throw, didn't come to anything, unfortunately. And the game kind of took, because we were playing so many different types and styles, it took a little bit, unfortunately, longer than we had available to us. And by turn 11, it was decided that there wasn't enough time to play the full game. I had the advantage, so I said that, well, let's, we had options. We could have either taken photos of where our positionals were and the players were on the pitch, and then come back another time and finish off the game. Unfortunately for Jack, that wasn't an option. He, like a few of us here, have got children. Christmas is coming. Plus, he also has 4 more games to play before the cutoff point, which I'm sure you'll come to at the end of this commentary. The other 2 options were a roll-off. So that's each coach rolls a dice 5 times, best of 5 wins, or one of us could have conceded. I said, well, let's do a roll-off. However, Jack counter-argued and said that he felt that I had the advantage and that I could score and that he would concede. But with a bit of gentlemanly conduct, we agreed that even though we were conceding, it would be a case that no team would lose their SPP that they'd gained that game. We got that clarified by both yourself and Scott, Chris, on the day. So that's how it unfortunately ended, which is a shame, really, because I would have liked to have finished off the game because it was such a good, fun game. So yeah, that's how it went.
Yeah, it's something that's worth noting is that we know sometimes games won't be able to be finished in time. We know sometimes games won't be played. And myself and Scott will make a judgment in any of those situations where someone wants a judgment. What was really nice here is that both yourself and Jack sort of looked at the situation in front of you, chatted about kind of the outcomes, and both agreed on an outcome that you felt was fair based on how the game had gone. And we will always, we would always absolutely rather that we don't have to make a decision and that the coaches between them decide how the game should end. And it felt, looking at how the situation was on the pitch and how it had gone and how the play had gone, it felt like you both agreed on an ending that was really fair. And that was really good to see. Scott, our little boy Tom got a win in and is shooting up the table. Aren't we proud?
The Clueless Crusaders, unbeaten now in 3.
Look at
2
that.
wins and a draw. Talk about a change of season. It gives a message to all the coaches out there. The season is never over. So, Tom, tell us about the next steps for the Crusaders then. Obviously on a bit of a roll here. You've got Frank with 22 of 24 SPP, who's your main catcher, Frank Butterfingers.
Mm-hmm.
He's got block, he's got diving catch. Are you gonna stat bust him? What's your plans for the Crusaders, Tom?
I don't know. I've got Biggles, my halfling. Hopeful has got 6 SPP, and I do wonder whether to put sprint on him. So just give him the extra little distance for 1-turn touchdowns or something along those lines. I've already kind of mentioned that they're not going to be coming back next season, so it might be a bit of fun. Because equally, looking at where I am in my group, I'm sitting at 10th, but 9th, 8th, and 7th and myself all have 7 points. 9th, Jack Huns, he's played all his games. I've got 2 games left to play. One of which is actually against Phil, who's in 7th at the moment with 7 points. So I'm quietly confident that I might be tapping on the on one of those positions, 2, maybe 2 or even 3 spaces above myself at the moment.
It shows this
Look,
season, like what we've the changes to this season have really worked in the sense of that was just one victory that has shot you into
Yeah,
contention, and the kind of the confidence that one victory can get you, or even now like like a draw in your next game if it's against Phil is a 6 point draw, isn't it? It's these 6 point
yeah,
games are
absolutely.
now so big. The swing that they can have on a game is incredible.
I've also finally, well, I say finally, but slowly getting to understand the human team. That they can do lots of different things, but they don't do anything very well. So again, some of the actual breakthroughs in this match that I've just played were very fortunate on it. I've been doing different things, trying out different tactics on different players, but I haven't got an easy run now. I've got Phil with his corn team and Jamie with his dwarves. So so this might be my last my last hurrah for the season.
A good result then for the Clueless Crusaders, 2-1
very.
victory there, and a lovely display of sportsmanship from both coaches as well. So well done, a testament to the league that we have here. Let's have a look at what all of those results have done to the standings then in the ABC. The Numpties still sit at the top, Cherry Bombs in second. No change to the top four with no games being played between those coaches. Not many games happening in this side actually at all. Just the Clueless Crusaders now moving up to 10th in this division, but actually no other games being played. So just the movement there to bring them into contention in the middle of the pitch. In the NBC, a lot of movement here. Then the Transfigurian Terrors up to first. Ducks still staying in second and in the hunt after that loss. The T-Belly Trudgers move up to fifth, just ahead of the Jaffa Cakes on touchdown difference with the varying results there. Buffalo Biggins still sitting there in seventh, keeping an eye at the top of the table. Dead Star Belgrave and Riotous Rams both with wins this week, jumping up to 9th and 10th. And looking at the bottom, Leanne and the Boulders Army still sitting at the bottom of the table so far. You can see there Crimson Coven are grayed out and A&D Dark Elves are moved in. Obviously their results are effectively combined, but no wins there to worry about at all. That's it. That's all 8 games this week. We've got more games being played this week, which we'll bring you as many of as we can coming to next week there. We are just over halfway now. Everyone remember to have a look and get your games in. Please keep an eye out for the Aardvarks and Dragons opening times over Christmas as well, and make sure that you get in touch to book your games when you can, as to make sure that we get as many games in as possible. That's it for us. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for this roundup. We will see you at the next one.